Thank you. Carlo Ratti from Boston to Torino, architect, designer, inventor, almost like a man from Renaissance. Something that today is very much needed because the complexity of the challenges that we're facing as humanity really require us to go outside of the boxes. And architecture has been a very enclosed box. But now we are really understanding that we need to go out and operating these blurry boundaries of what is software, construction, systems, mobility. And that is what we're going to talk about today with Carlo.
Thank you, David. Yes, blurry boundaries. I think, like the way you're framing it. I would like to, maybe what we can call it, maybe we should give a name together. But I think I like the idea of design at large. So somehow, something where you actually break those boundaries you're saying in order to tackle the big challenges we face. And I would say so because what comes to mind is a book by Bucky Fuller. I think, you all know Buckminster Fuller is a great architect, designer, inventor in the past century. I remember the book called Utopia or Oblivion. And I think that if design keeps on doing, beautifying our, everyday objects, doing more chairs. Together with Dan Rosegar, we wanted to do at this design week, we wanted to have a big bonfire with chairs. But the point is, it's not about chairs, but it's about, in here, we want to be mindful of, the salone, the mobile. Mobile is, all the furniture part. But certainly, if design keeps on just on dealing with beautifying existing objects, then, like Bucky Fuller would have said, it's going to be oblivion. But I think if design actually can tackle the big challenges of our times, so first and foremost, clearly climate change and segregation in cities and so on, if it becomes interdisciplinary, the blurry edges you're referring to, then I think, like Bucky Fuller would have said, it can be utopia.
Utopia, in moments that the world looks like a dystopian movie. I'm very good that you brought Mr. Fuller, because his work, in a way, was scaling after the war. And he was taking advantages from a moment where we were having mass production of things, serializing, bringing machine into construction, into development. And in a way, we went away from that, but now, with the current challenges, this is what we need.
Yeah, and the scaling is very important. By the way, for the people in the back, there's still a couple of chairs here if you wanna come closer. But yeah, I think the first thing is, the first thing I would say, what you were saying before, is about how we work together from different disciplines, combining. We were saying it a moment ago, from physics to mathematics to design to sociology, and combining that. And the second point is the scaling. So how can we actually turn this from what we do in the office to really applying it at the level they can have an impact on the ecosystem. The ecosystem can be the cities. I would add another thing, that maybe the key thing we're all trying to do is actually how to put together the worlds of the natural and the artificial. How to combine them, how to go from thinking about them in the 20th century as two separate worlds into something that converges, where the two actually come together.
And to put it into a concrete example, you have a project now that you are showcasing in the Milan Design Week.
Yeah, so in Milan Design Week, by the way, if you're interested, I say to all of you, we got a couple of things. We got a few things this year, but a couple of them you might be great if you want to stop by. One is at Orto Botanico. Giardino Botanico, Orto Botanico, is in Brera. It's this beautiful place in the core of Milan. Milan is a city where you got all these beautiful green pockets we don't expect. One of them is really in the city center next to Piazza della Scala, this botanical garden. And over there we've been working with Plenitude, a company producing energy, to turn the place into an energy park, to show different ways we can actually produce energy and use energy in the space. All of them threaded with almost a big snake made of copper that connects all the things. And you produce energy with the sun, with kinetic energy, with all the different sources, and then you use it in the way we use it in our lives. And so that was a way, again, not to just to talk about something, but try to do it there, almost like a microgrid in the city, and the microgrid merge with nature, again, with this idea of combining the natural and the artificial. Now, the other thing is at Base in Tortona, and it was about something else that happened almost like randomly. And it was starting to work with a company. We did a bit of work with companies dealing with coffee. We've done a few things with Lavazza at the World Expo in Dubai. Remember the cafe when we met there? Also the cafe, the Lavazza Cafe in London, and working between cafe. But one of the things, the beauty of coffee, which is actually inherently very Italian, is actually something that brings us together. Like the aperitivo before, is the beauty of physical space, the beauty of encountering, the exchanges, the magics we're seeing at Salone, when you bump into what you're not looking for, the serendipity. Anyway, so again, in this project at Base, we are trying to look at that, but the problem with coffee is that it is something that creates those connections, but the production is actually the opposite. The production usually have a machine, and then you give the bag to other people, and then you produce, very quickly your whatever cappuccino or espresso, and then you drink it together. And so here what we tried to do was, can we actually also the making of the coffee, can it become like a collaborative thing? So it is something like a tatami with this machine, a three-way machines where people can like cooking together, but in this case, just the coffee you're having at the beginning of your day, that experience as well becomes shared. So those are a couple of things, and again, if you stop by, we'll continue that conversation.
With this, also an important theme comes to my mind about your work, because architecture, this is not like lines of codes in which we can rapidly develop, pivot, bring solutions like it's happening into everything that is connected to the internet. It's slower, we're moving bricks. Yeah. But speed is entering because the problems are coming fast. And I want to ask you, were you able to, in a way, act quick during the pandemic with a project like CURA?
Yeah, no, and thanks for asking that. And it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. How to tackle today's big challenges, we need to be together. Again, let's call it for tonight just design at large or architecture at large. And CURA was actually at the very beginning of the pandemic, all of us, we asked ourselves, what can we do to help? And clearly at the beginning, as you might recall, one key thing was missing. It was about intensive care units. We had intensive care units in hospital, but not enough for the population. The other problem at the beginning was that actually the pandemic was swept from one city to another city. And then how could you have something that can move quickly from one place to another place? And that's what led to doing this project called CURA. And CURA is based on containers that turn into intensive care units, and then the people can clone and replicate. Now, over there were two interesting lessons for me. One was totally open source. And so just we started, and after a few days, we had thousands of people from all over the world actually helping and contributing. So and people from, experts in healthcare, people from mechanical engineering, from civil engineering, architects, designers, many others using interaction. So that was the open platform actually can bring us together very quickly and respond to an emergency. That was the first thing. The second thing is that after that, clearly, we put everything online and open it up. So it became like an open source thing. And at that point, magic things started to happen with people all over the world downloading the drawings and replicating. One of my favorites is a group actually in Canada. And this group had been working a lot in producing containers for growing marijuana. So, the containers, put lights and you grow marijuana and you move that. And they actually got the drawings from CURA and started producing just intensive care units globally with their knowledge and expertise with containers. So some other two lessons was actually an open platform, first of all, can do what you're saying to bridge and to bring together different people around the fuzzy boundaries. But the other thing can help us scale up much faster, especially in case of emergency.
Also very interesting because to me, that is one of the big challenges for architecture that is so slow sometimes when things are happening so fast. But also in relation to time and the future, because as things are happening faster, how can we future-proof, or how can we be one step ahead of thinking? And with that, I want you to share with us what you are doing in terms of mobility, which is a huge theme today, in which we are at portas to have autonomous cars, and really this can redefine how we see cities, how we see distances, time.
Well, we've always, again, as we said before, one of the things is how can we make natural and artificial, can we have them converge better? And mobility clearly is part of that. Mobility, looking at the city as a living thing, becomes, looking at all the flows. It was the old dream of Ildefonso Cerdà, the father of Barcelona, modern Barcelona, in the second half of the 19th century. He said, I wish with data I could look at the city, like I wish, urbanism could become like a science through data, through real-time data. And today, the time that he was dreaming about has actually come. So that time is here with us. And so mobility is a big part of that. Data is a big part of that. As you see, a few students from Polytechnico. This year we did a class between Politecnico di Milano and MIT together, joint class. And that was all about big data analytics. We're seeing more and more people in architecture actually starting to learn AI, using big data, cleaning the data, and so on. And we see that it's kind of part of what you were saying about how bridging between disciplines in order to make sense of a complex system. If we keep on looking at the city with the tools from 50 years ago, or the Le Corbusier tools from 100 years ago, we'll not be able to make sense of the complexity of the present. So somehow mobility is a big part of that, and again, data can be one lens to look at it. One of the things we did a few years ago was using big data. We started what became later Uber Pool, the sharing of trips, that then are turned into a big industry globally. We analyzed that, we did a paper, and then Uber reached out and we started collaborating. But basically, so data is a big part of that in mobility. There's many other things also, rethinking the form factor, rethinking, it doesn't make any sense to move like an SUV for 1 ton of steel, for us to move us for 1 or 2 miles. So micromobility has beautiful design challenges today. But again, those challenges, you need to have designers, architects, planners, engineers, you name it, in order to make sense of all of that.
Oh, it's really interesting, this last part, because I think that Uber Pool, for example, and this shared mobility sounds very obvious to us. But there is one layer that is not so easy, that is the social relations with people. And now that we're in the urban age, cities living together, and living together in density, the problem is not about the housing, the infrastructure, but actually how we're going to relate to each other together. And how do you bring that?
Here you're on a slippery slope, and it's what actually our students at MIT are becoming very passionate how to combine Uber Pool and Tinder. But that's for another conversation. But basically it's about but ultimately, what is a city? Think about, cities didn't exist 10,000 years ago. And that our ancestors discovered this beautiful way to bring us together. So together, we build relationship, what you're saying. Together, we can be more than each of us individually, precisely because, we exchange ideas like tonight, we exchange goods, chromosomes, you name it. But that's the magic of what a city is.
But interesting, because this layer, one of the ways of scaling, we would say, is software. As you mentioned, Tinder, Uber Pool. How do you think that this layer of software can interact with the build? That is also something that you have explored.
Yeah. Well, for me, they are the same thing. But this is a conversation. If there was this would be a conversation to discuss with Stefano. There was this thing that said, Stefano. It was just a mistake in the problem. We had the conversation, but because some people think that the digital is not really architecture, but I think it's inherently architecture and design. It's about looking at how we change relationships. And if you define it like that, then both of them are just different ways to deal with interactions and with what the city is, with all these connections that tie us together.
And from your window, doing all these kind of things, how would you now define what is architecture?
Well, let me expand it a little bit and say, open it up to the people here. So you're all here in Milan Design Week. So let's hear your definition of design. Any thoughts? What is design? You can shout, we repeat the thing. There's also a microphone. What is design for you? What do you say? Everything is design. In Milan this week, yes, everything is design. Any other thoughts? Come on, don't be shy.
Nothing. Nothing.
Nothing. A solution to problem. That's, I hear that often, but I need to say I usually disagree. But any other thoughts? Everybody, who thinks is a solution to problem design?
The beauty of functionality. The beauty of functionality.
The beauty of functionality. Interesting. But do you think then all design must be functional? No. So then what's your definition?
Design is like,
Go ahead, come on.
design is, it's a passionate illusion for need.
Is it again, a passion?
Passionate illusion for need. If it is the right, we can design whatever, any shape, but we design with some shape. It's a design with need.
Okay, design with need. Okay, but so you also think there's kind of a solution because if there's a need, there's a problem in search of a solution or something like that. Well, okay, we could go around. By the way, this is I think it's always good, and we're all here for Design Week, but often you find we all have different ideas of what design is. And so I'll tell you, for me, design actually, it goes back to your question, is or the most beautiful definition of design is in a book by a guy called Herbert Simon. Herbert Simon won the Nobel Prize in economics in the past century, but was also a mathematician, a researcher. And this book is called The Sciences of the Artificial. And what Herbert Simon says is the following. He says, the natural sciences look at how the world is, but actually design looks at how the world ought to be. And so design becomes a way to transform the present into something that's softly better. To look outside and look at it square, and you can say, oh my God, if I were to do, change that building or refurbish it or do something, I can turn it into a better space for people. But not necessarily about the solution. And for me, the most beautiful piece of design of the past 100 years is probably the internet. They change everybody's lives forever. For the first time, with a click, we got all of human knowledge. And that was not trying to solve a problem. It was just a dream of people saying, if I connect a computer with another computer, if I create a network, then something will happen. And actually something happened, but was not trying to solve any problem in the beginning. The problems, the Uber, the Amazon, the Google Maps, the Tinder, and all the stuff came later as a consequence. So I would say, it's almost like looking at what is outside and seeing how can I transform the city or a building or something into a different future.
Well, thank you, Carlo, for opening a little window into the diverse array of things that you are working, thinking, and obviously feeling very passionate about. And now I wonder if you have any questions for Carlo.
Or thoughts.
Thoughts.
It doesn't work anymore. Yeah, or thoughts or disagreements. I think this is, no, it's working again, yeah. Anything you'd like to share? I think we scared them a lot with the interrogation about design. Yes, I see a hand.
Thanks for your presentation. It's I was quite intrigued by how you're able to explain all of these sort of different dimensions of what you're doing. And I work in Norway at a technical university, and we have basically a lot of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary attempts at sustainable cities, at sustainable design, and integrating social science and natural science, et cetera. And one of the things that strikes me in your conversation is we have a similar set of conversations, but they seem to be isolated in some level by this sort of team effort, which is helpful, but connected solely to the university itself. And one of the sort of fabulous things of being here at Milan Design Week and listening to you guys is that it seems to be much more, how do you connect these different communities of practice that are clearly integrating their disciplines, but somehow still producing this self-enclosed ideological self-sufficiency that doesn't sort of connect with some of these other groups. So, for example, the communities of practice that you're now describing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's. I think it's a great point. And first of all, I want to say also, one important thing in this is also what David, what a lot of people here are doing, which is actually finding a space, a forum. We need forums. We need forums like the physical one tonight. We need forums online. We need forums, printed ones. But in order to talk about this and explore these boundaries, I can tell you one way to look at this. I'll tell you what happens in the lab. So in the lab at MIT, but also in the office, we got people again from design, from architecture, from engineering, but also people coming from computer science, from physics, from mathematics, or from the social sciences, economics or sociology. And at the beginning, it's tough. It's tough also. The first thing that is very important is actually how you create a language. Many times we use a language, but with different words, or we use the same words for different things. So somehow the first thing is starting to understand each other. The second thing that they see interesting is actually the metrics. You find the people coming, doing a postdocs from physics. And what they want to do is publish in Nature or Science. And then you got people coming from design and they want to have something at MoMA or at the Museum of Modern Art or somewhere else. And again, then it becomes interesting because people get curious and learn about the metrics and what they mean and so on, and they find. So I would say a lot of this is starting to create a common ground, because only when you got a common ground, then the magic happens. And then people start crossing boundary and working these kind of fuzzy edges and developing new things. The final thing that comes to mind, I'm jumping between different things, is, I remember something that was in a McKinsey report, one of the, anyway, one few interesting McKinsey thing was this idea of, a T-shaped education. So basically something very focused on a vertical, but also the T that you're able to at least have a conversation with many other disciplines. So you need to know very, very well something, because there you can make an original contribution, you can break the boundaries or whatever, you can push the limit. But at the same time, the T, the other part of the T in terms of education, is what allows you to branch out and connect and have that conversation with other disciplines. So maybe if you all think of ourselves in that way, when you combine all the T's, you got that network of relationships. That is where, again, the magic can happen.
Thank you for taking us into this super intense, diverse journey of what you are thinking, looking at, and doing.
No, thank you. And I would say maybe another thing is thank you and for bringing it, because this is a collective conversation. Again, the other thing, maybe that's a good way to finish, is that, I always think about the 20th century idea of architects, the person who single-handedly could fix a solution, millions of people, even without bothering to ask them if they wanted. Think like Corbusier with the Plan Voisin, demolishing all of Paris. He never asked anybody, but he proposed it and was ready to implement it, to do it. And I think today is a different time. And I think it's really together. And together means different disciplines. Together means like tonight sharing ideas. So I would like to propose that maybe the topic for this year's Design Week, or maybe the next year as well, is more call it the choral designer. So designer, that's all of us sharing our hands and our thoughts.
And in that is where we find each other in this blurry boundary.
In fact, by connecting, by the network and connecting. So what I'm saying is let's not look at this as, we are all sharing and learning from each other. And I think, but in design is particularly important. Like the work, what you were telling me at the beginning, what you're doing with Toshiko, and also looking at gender and inequalities in the world of design, I think the other thing is breaking down this idea of the ego of the designer, that one person has the solution, and turning more into collaborative, choral designing.
Thank you, Carlo.
Thank you, David. And thank you all.